But here's the tricky part about just going about the business of being okay. That is, to me, the key takeaway from this islands chapter for me and your drawbridge is that I think when we find ourselves telling everybody we're okay, we're good, I'm good, it's good, we know we're happy, we're good with this. It's often because we have not put the boundaries in place to actually just be living okay.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So, and when we're just living okay, people think that boundaries are a wall or a moat around our heart, but they're not. I mean, that's why I love this drawbridge metaphor, because to me, good boundaries are a drawbridge to self-respect, that we can only get about being okay, not just professing it, but actually being okay when we've got a really good drawbridge operator in ourselves.
That's
Do you know
right.
what I mean? Because when we're getting pushed around,
Yeah.
then we're actually not okay. We're just talking about being okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I felt like for me, I remember saying to my sister, because we started this island metaphor really early. Abby and I did. And I remember saying, I'm sick of being like a missionary for my island. Like, I'm not going to leave my island anymore to tell everybody how okay we are. I love it on my island. I'm just going to stay here. And one thing we figured out early, and Brené, I think this is a tricky thing that I learned about boundaries from this particular situation in my life, is I think we think of boundaries as things we're going to put up with certain people. For me, I figured out that my non-negotiables couldn't be people. My non-negotiables in that time had to be ideas. So what I mean by that is we had, when we were very new and our relationship was very new and our children were still adjusting and there was a lot going on and my children were in deep grief because of divorce is always traumatic for kids. It was a lot. And we had this saying that Abby would say to me over and over again, no fear in, no fear in, like no fear is allowed on our island. And what happened to me is in that moment with my mother, the person who I love the most. I mean, Brené, my mother and my sister and Abby are my best friends. We talk 20 times a day. My mother is my person. And to have the person that you love be the one that's carrying the fear is when I realized in this situation where my family needs my leadership more than ever, my non-negotiables aren't people, they're fear. So I had to look at my mother and say, oh, you're carrying fear, you can't come. Because no fear on our island, regardless of who is carrying it. Right? I think that
It's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, because I think women especially, we think that, we're taught to be accommodating. We're taught to be kind and accepting and all the things. So we think, well, no matter what, I have to let my mom and like I have these certain people on my island. Like we think that it is our job to convince all the people on our island to love and accept us. But what I figured out is, oh, no. It's my job to only let people on my island, no matter who they are, who already accept and celebrate us.
I remember this moment when I read this line about a woman becomes a responsible parent when she stops being an obedient daughter. So Ellen's 20 now, she's a junior in college, but when she was maybe 18 months, we were visiting my dad and I said, I'm super excited. Ellen's starting Montessori, next week. And he goes, whoa, she's too young for school, sis, And I said, she's had a caregiver at home while I've been working, but now we're going to put her in school. Well, no, what you don't understand, sis, is that, time flies and this is the time where you need to be focused on her and you need to, and this from my dad who was gone all the time, and my mom who gave up her career because of her messaging about martyrdom. And I was like, I started thinking about it and he goes, I know you want to be a good mother. And just was like, oh, Jesus. And I said, I'm going to go put Ellen down and let's talk about this a minute. And he said, okay. And so I went and put Ellen down upstairs at his house and came back down. And I said, I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't have the language from this book. But I said, it was my island. I was like, and what you can't bring to my island is shame about not being good because that's my stuff, And so I just said, look, I really appreciate how much you love Ellen and how much you love me. And I get the fear, but unless you can support me wholeheartedly about how I'm going to parent Ellen, then any conversations about parenting are off the table.
Amen.
If we can't keep the parenting conversations off the table, then me visiting you with my kids will be off the table. And, you know, he did his whole like, God damn, sis, and anything for things to get sideways here. And, you know, and then about 30 minutes later, he walked back into his study and I stayed in the living room and I was on my laptop. He came back and he said, you know, I think it might just be hoping your kids get it better than you did and getting out of their damn way.
Oh.
In that moment, it was the last time he ever said anything to me, except, way to go, sis. But in that moment, I just remember thinking, I have to disobey my dad here for Ellen and for myself. Yeah. And this is going to be, what if this is the end of something, you know? But it was the beginning of something so beautiful. And it takes me back to liberation is never one way.
That's right.
Okay, I've got one more thing we have to talk about because there's so many things that took my breath away. But this one, I'm going to 89. You and I are both sober. So I guess I'll be 24 years this May.
Wow. I'm 17 years.
You
17.
Right? 17 years. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
So you write about pain a lot. Your mantra is, I can feel everything and survive. I can use pain to become. Here's what you write in this paragraph. Since I got sober, I have never been fine again. Not for a single moment. I have been exhausted and terrified and angry. I have been overwhelmed and underwhelmed, depressed and anxious. I have been amazed and awed and delighted and overjoyed. I have been reminded constantly by the ache. This will pass. Stay close. I have been alive.
It's so fun to hear you read this, Brené.
I can think of some words to describe reading it, but fun is not the top of mind. I haven't been fine again since I've been sober. I haven't been fine for 24 years.
Yeah, I think fine just means half dead, right? I mean, we're just...
Yes.
We're just taught that. I mean, I don't know. I think that most of the messages we get from everywhere are this message that we don't need our pain. We don't need our pain. We can buy our way out of it. We can distract our way out of it. We can scroll our way out of it. I think it's interesting when I think about every great spiritual teacher who's ever walked the earth, it just always has the opposite message about pain, right? Just it's this idea that no, you actually do need your pain. You do need your pain and you can survive it. And not only can you survive it, but your kids can survive it. And, you know, you just walk through enough fires and you figure out that you're fireproof, right? That's, if there's any lesson that I've learned from my sobriety, it's that. It's that no matter how the hot loneliness, Pema Chodron calls it, that bubbles up, it's just the pain of being human, that it's always survivable. And that if we don't transport ourselves out of that pain, that we transform ourselves. Right? Like it's just one or the other, transport or transform. But if you stay, you become the version of yourself that you were meant to become next. But I will tell you this, Brené. I will never choose suffering again. I no longer believe what I was taught to believe my whole life as a woman, as my mother's daughter, as a Catholic, as I do not believe that pain is to be worshipped anymore. I remember having a conversation with a dear friend, telling her I was going to just give Abby up, that it was going to be more painful than anything I could imagine, but that I have always been able to learn from pain, so I will be okay. And she said, yes, Glennon, you can learn from pain. You have proven that for decades. But what if you can also learn from joy? So I think for me, I've figured out there's a few different kinds of pain. There is the pain of just being human. There's the pain of living what you would call a wholehearted life, right? It's the pain of loss. It's the pain of losing people and animals and relationships and situations we thought we couldn't live without. It's the pain of love, right? It's the price of love. And that's fine. I will pay that for the rest of my life. But there is another kind of pain, and that is a pain that is chosen. That is the pain of a woman who has slowly abandoned herself. And that is the kind of pain that as a 44-year-old woman, I will never choose again. When I can choose between pain and joy, I will choose joy.
You know what's so true in my experience, so profoundly true in my experience, is that learning to become from pain and stay in the pain and feel everything is actually, it's the prerequisite for being able to discern different types of pain.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Like, this is not becoming pain that I'm in. This is self-betrayal pain that I'm in.
Yes.
But you have to be intimate with pain to understand what you have to sit in and what you have to pull out of with different choices. But that requires an intimacy with pain.
I mean, Brené, that's why I don't know how to put this into words. That's why everything that I know comes to me from sobriety, right? Nothing happens to me. I have nothing in my life right now if I don't go to that first meeting, right? And I think it was my 5th meeting that I just spoke for the first time and just said a bunch of words, and I just said, I was pissed. Okay, I was pissed when I got sober because I felt like everyone was trying to tell me that life would be better if I got sober. And the thing about getting sober is that it's not better at first. It's worse. It's way worse. It's terrible. It's horrible because you're defrosted.
It is.
You know, it's just so hard. And I remember sitting at that first meeting and saying, "Hi, I'm Glennon, and I'm an addict, and I just feel like I'm doing life wrong. I just feel like everyone else knows something that I don't know because everything hurts. And it just feels like this is harder for me than other people. And I just want to know what everyone else knows." And then I stopped talking, and this woman came up to me after the meeting, and she said, "I just want you to know that it's not hard because you're doing it wrong. It's really hard because you're finally doing it right." Right? That, like, feelings are just for feeling, all of them. That all feelings are for feeling. And Brené, I know that sounds like the most simple thing on the earth, but it was just world shifting for me. And, you know, I just come away from I come to sobriety with this idea that feeling it all is really, really hard. But there's one thing that would be worse than feeling it all, and that is missing it all. That the feeling it all is how we don't miss this being human thing, how we don't miss this becoming thing, this being alive, this love thing that we're doing here. And it all starts with just being still and letting being human happen to you.
Thank you for walking us through being human.
Thank you for doing the same.
Yeah, Untamed. I'm holding it in my hands right now. The cover's Untamed. The structure's Untamed. You're freaking Untamed. Yeah, it's amazing. I have a lightning round, 10 questions, but before we get to those, I want to ask some questions. So Untamed, it's out right now. You can get it anywhere where you get books. Where can people find you who want to learn more about you and your work?
Well, they could go to Glennon Doyle on Twitter, even though I'm terrible at Twitter, but hey, say hi. Instagram is my favorite. I'm at Glennon Doyle on Instagram, and I'm at Glennon Doyle on Facebook. And also, they could come to Together Rising, which is really my baby in my life and my greatest pride, which is the all-women nonprofit that you sister us with, Brené, so beautifully, and that has raised $25 million for hurting women and children around the globe.
So let's take a minute. I was like, I wonder if we're allowed to take a minute and just go a little bit long, but I'm like, it's my podcast. Watch. Talk to me a minute about Together Rising.
I mean, you know what? I think that Together Rising, well, it's our nonprofit. I think it's just the inevitable outcome of women who have stopped believing that they don't get to be outraged and heartbroken. And, you know, that their outrage and heartbreak might actually not mean that there's something wrong with them, that it might actually mean that there's just something wrong in the world that they have the power to change. So it's just all tied together, Brené. It's like when I figured out that I was not broken.
It's all tied together.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I think about myself as a child and, you know, the high sensitivity and the anger and the rage that made me hide inside of addiction is the same anger and rage and passion that I use to be a really good activist with Together Rising. So I think every word that I write or read is really about Together Rising. It's just women banded together to use their heartbreak to make a difference.